welcome back to another installment of Inspiral Gaming Weekly. I'm Daniel, and I'm back with my informant, Robert Hodge.
Hey there.
This week we'll be covering one of my favorite topics, the lore of Dimension Door, and I've got a lot on my plate, so let's dig right in. A few episodes back, you mentioned a character named Lysander in regards to the main scenario, and I wanted to ask you then, but I figured I'd wait until we were actually covering this topic. But who is Lysander, and what does he have to do with the game's main scenario?
So Lysander is this self-proclaimed purger of evil. He calls himself the Realm Wanderer. His actions, as described in his journal, precede the point that players enter the mansion with their characters. He entered the mansion a while back before he decided to start actually writing this journal, and he had been running and hiding, scared, restless, and exhausted, that he had actually forgotten how and why he entered the mansion so long ago. So when he did decide to write in a journal of his life in the mansion, he did it so that other people, if in the future, if they find this journal and they read it, they can be more informed and prepared for the horrors within the mansion. At some point in the story, he changes from someone who's scared and hiding all the time to someone who's actually facing his fears and fighting back, which is kind of when he calls himself the Realm Wanderer.
Don't you think it's a little egotistical to give yourself your own title?
Yeah, so imagine going through a very horrific mansion by yourself with no one around. You kind of start to go insane. So it kind of shows in his writing of his own journal.
Okay. Will he have a presence in the actual game?
His presence is indirect. Players, when they play, it's in the aftermath. So they can find and collect his journals, which are scattered throughout the mansion. Something that collectors and lore lovers will enjoy finding because it'll unveil more and more of the mysteries of the mansion through his perspective. But you'll never actually encounter himself, nor can you play as him in Dimension Door.
Oh, okay. So are there any other non-playable characters that play an important role to the story in Dimension Door?
Yeah. So in Lysander's journal, you'll read and you'll learn about some powerful beings that he calls prime beings. Some prime beings that are heavily referenced in the book as well as the game are named Sarah the Endless Stag and Balagor Death's Gaze. There are many prime beings, and they're all, one way or another, a physical manifestation of some sort of negative emotion or abstraction. For example, Sarah the Endless Stag is vengeance, and Balagor Death's Gaze is anxiety.
Okay. When you mention a book, do you mean like an actual book or only a book within the game?
An actual book. So I'm writing this book called Lysander's Journal, which will be released alongside the game, and it's actually going to be also in-game content. So when players are playing the game, they may find some of these pages, and it's like an achievement system.
Okay, that's an interesting kind of cross-media promotion type thing. Why are the guests in the manor?
So each guest will have a small bio that will describe a little bit about their life prior to the mansion, and it will also explain how and why they happened upon the mansion. So each person's more or less unique in that sense. Some may have entered unknowing of the dangers. Others may have willingly sought it out.
Oh, so it sounds like Lysander's not the only person who's crazy in this mansion.
No.
What is the story about behind the servants of the house?
So servants, they play a special role in Lysander's journal, and I don't really want to spoil it, but there's a reason why servants exist in the mansion and why a player will become one.
Okay. And that's something that we would find out through either the book or the game eventually?
Both.
Okay.
Actually, probably mostly the book. The game is more or less just a gameplay as the aftermath.
Okay. So what is so special about this manor that it pulls in creatures from different dimensions?
So the mansion happens to be in a pocket in space-time that exists in multiple universes, kind of like a grand central station for all these universes. since the fabric of space is weaker there. And it also explains why the rooms shift around because of this chaotic nature of that space. So, for example, imagine having a bouquet of balloons all tied together tightly at the entryway of each balloon, where you would normally blow it up. Now, think about all those entryways being merged together in a way so that some of the air from each of the balloons are actually mixing at that point. So that little area in the conglomeration of balloons, it exemplifies the mansion in this pocket of multi-universal space. So there are multiple reasons different creatures exist in the mansion. Lysander's journal will explain some of them, and the reader can probably extrapolate those explanations across all of the monsters.
Okay, so what I'm gathering from what you just said is that balloons are awesome.
Yes, they are.
But will we learn anything about the other dimensions that these monsters are coming from?
Yeah, that's actually pivotal to the story in Lysander's journal. And a few of them are actually explained there.
Okay. Will the story behind Dimension Door be at the forefront of the game, or will it play more of a secondary role?
So it's a bit of both, but it's mostly in the background. The players enter the mansion during the aftermath of the events that take place in Lysander's journal. So those who read the book will see familiar creatures, rooms, items, etc. It's kind of like reading a book that's turned into a movie and watching the movie afterwards, and you can kind of make the connections, be like, oh, that's cool, that's in there, oh, that's cool how they interpreted that, etc.
Okay, so it'll be a worthwhile experience for people who are more interested in the lore, because you'll be able to find out more if you're interested in it, but if you're not, you can just play the game and enjoy it that way.
Right, yeah, you can be in the mansion and fighting a monster, or you can be in the mansion fighting a monster and understanding why.
Yeah.
That's the difference.
Understanding the monster's inner workings and emotions and how it feels about being in this mansion.
Yeah. It's kind of cool because if you read the book before playing the game, then you kind of know a little bit about that monster that you might face, and you might actually know ahead of time. Like if everyone's playing for the first time, you will be much more prepared, which is actually the whole intention that Lysander wrote the journal.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So how will those that really want to immerse themselves into the lore of Dimension Door learn more about it?
So currently the only two ways to learn about the lore of Dimension Door is either by reading Lysander's journal or playing the game itself. And as of now, neither are released, and of course we're planning to, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
Also, I do plan on finding other ways to expand the lore for the players, but yeah, like right now there's only those two.
Do you plan to use the story behind Dimension Door in future titles?
Yeah, we want to expand the lore to make it feel more immersive. And actually having another game is one of the ways we are considering doing so.
Well, I guess that's something to discuss through the future, but for now, we have another Monster of the Week, after not having one last week. This week we talked about the Imp, I believe?
Yep.
What myth or story inspired the Dimension Door version of the Imp?
So I looked into the demon familiar, the devil on your shoulder, but then I applied goat horns and hooves, which is also associated with the devil. So it eventually developed into this small flying demon satyr that flings fire and causes strife.
Okay. Can you talk about some of the gameplay mechanics associated with the Imp?
So the Imp is a mischievous creature that loves messing with people almost as much as it loves fire. It can attack from a range by throwing little fireballs, which have a chance of catching and actually setting the whole room on fire. Its mischief comes from its dread effect. Whenever a guest fails to pass the dread check, a random effect chosen from a small list will resolve. For example, things like rotating the room 90 degrees or switching the room's position in the mansion altogether with some other room. They aren't really that strong physically, but they can still pack quite a punch in combination with its fire and its dread effect. Plus, since they're fairly common, fighting them in numbers makes them really difficult when you're alone.
So, with something that's so varied in myth and pop culture, how did you decide on this rendition of the Imp?
So when I was creating monsters, I thought to myself, I want some kind of troublemaker monster. Something that would tap your shoulder and smash cream pie in your face and just laugh. So I thought of various kinds of mischievous creatures, like a fairy, a sprite, pixies, goblins, you name it. I then thought about what kind of monster it would be categorized as. And I thought that demon would be the best fit for a mischievous creature, kind of like the devil on your shoulder, as I mentioned before. So that's the pathway I kind of took, and how I came to the conclusion of the imp.
Speaking of conclusions, I'd like to conclude this episode now. Last week we asked, what would you like to hear us talk about on one of these episodes? And we're just going to extend that question to this week as well. Just let us know, and maybe we'll talk about it next week. So thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with another installment of Inspiral Gaming Weekly.